To discuss this and plenty more, I'm now joined by Liberal Senator for South Australia, Alex Antic, and my sparring partner on Paul Murray Live, Graham Richardson. How are you both?
Excellent.
Fantastic. So, Alex, this is Labor have come round and said, yep, OK, we're agreeing with the Foreign Relations Bill. Does this signal the end for Dan Andrews' Belt and Road?
It's not looking flush,
it's good news. No, it's good news, and it sort of it kind of keeps, I think, the future of those sorts of arrangements well and truly under wraps. I mean, it's work that needed to be done, and legislatively, it's great to see Labor come to the party. I mean, they've sort of thrown the axe a little bit on some of the games that have been going on with the China stuff, you know, suggesting that the manner in which the government has gone about some of this stuff has been poor. But of course, that's not the case. The government's acted decisively. This is a great example of it. I mean, it's not just state governments. It applies to universities. It applies to local governments. And I spent 4 years on the City Council here in Adelaide, for which I'm still receiving therapy. I can tell you that it's well needed. It's important stuff, and it's really, really good to see Labor jump on board.
So, Richo, Albo's run up the white flag. Is this the end for Dan Andrews and his Belt and Road initiative?
Well, I think it certainly won't help it along, will it? But I think Albo's done the right thing. Look, foreign relations have to be run from Canberra. They can't be run from each state capital. That's ludicrous. We are one nation, and so we have to have one policy, and that has to be emanating from Canberra.
OK, I want to talk good. I'm glad we're in full agreement on that. Now, listen,
well, that
Iran...
means there's a chance you're right.
Exactly. Iran, let's go to Iran, Iran is willing to come back into full compliance with its nuclear deal. In fact, it can't wait to get back into its nuclear deal with Joe Biden, if he ever becomes president. We can argue about that, Richo. But only if all sanctions are lifted and Iran can pretty much do whatever it wants. What do you make of that, Alex?
Well, look, it's not surprising, as you say. I mean, you know, it's almost everything old is new again with the Biden regime. I mean, this will presumably be, you know, if, as you say, if it's to go ahead, it will presumably be, you know, more of the same faces from the Clinton, Obama, Biden, you know, crew. So it's not surprising that they'd be looking to go back to these sorts of deals. And, you know, I know Australia supported it with a certain number of concerns, I suppose, over the behaviour of Iran and the mullahs, specifically with respect to funding of organisations like Hezbollah. Look, I can understand why the mullahs would be very happy. I mean, it's going to be a much better arrangement for them than getting sanctions whacked across them. It's going to mean more money. It's going to mean more legitimacy in terms of the foreign position in relation to what they're doing with nuclear. Look, that's a matter for the US, but we can't rule out the fact that Donald Trump has got a President Trump, I should say, has got a very, very good track record of work in the Middle East, and it's borne fruit. So
and it's all going to collapse, Richo. It's all going to collapse under this Biden character of yours. But I was reassured yesterday, Richo, that Michael Flynn came out and said, no, we're not going to. We should have a some kind of intervention. The military should rerun a new election, and we should get rid of this dodgy election that's gone on. Were you surprised by that? Were you horrified by that thought?
Both. I think it would be appalling if the army intervened in American democracy, as I think most people do. And so I didn't like it very much. But it surprises me that Michael Flynn, who's, shall we say, a colourful character, wants to stay in the news so much.
So let me carry on with that thought, Richo. Do you dismiss what is happening in the US as simply Donald Trump being a bad loser, or do you think there is something in the allegations of fraud?
I don't think there's anything like enough in the allegations of fraud. So I think there's got to be a grave suspicion that he's a terrible loser, Trump.
Alex, for my part, I think there are so many allegations that I find it surprising that Richo would dismiss them so lightly. We are talking about fraud on a massive scale in the number one democracy in the world. Your thoughts, Alex?
Well, I'm with you, Rowan. I think you only have to look at some of the things that came out of Georgia yesterday in the hearings over there. I mean, for better or worse, the Trump team say they have got plenty of evidence. They showed 20 affidavits of evidence, and whether people like it or not, affidavits are evidence. They're sworn evidence, and there's anecdotal evidence. The only question that's really material here is whether or not it's evidence that ultimately the courts accept. And people forget the Trump administration has the benefit of a 5-4 Conservative majority in the Supreme Court. Now, my view is that these things are always harder to unpick than they are to achieve in the first place. So I think it will be very difficult. But I don't think this is done yet. I think there's plenty to see here yet. So it's going to get interesting, if nothing less.
I think that, Richo, if you were swapped sides, if you were in the Trump camp there, sitting with Rudy Giuliani and the others, what would your advice be to Donald Trump? If you looked at it and you thought there was genuine fraud on a large enough scale to change the vote, what would your advice be to the Trump team?
Hang on for grim death. Keep fighting.
I love it. That is fantastic. That's what I wanted to hear, Richo. That's exactly what I wanted to hear, and I'm 100% behind you there. I think we're going to see...
Hang on, there were certain conditions on what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So you don't think any of the allegations stack up or stack up sufficiently?
No, sufficiently. I think some of the allegations will stack up. They always will in a democracy of that size and an election that has to, count so many votes. But nowhere near enough. And Biden will be president, and we should all take 3 deep breaths.
Well, I'll try. But Alex, just quickly before we go, there's talk that the Dominion voting machines, the ones that are all at the centre of the allegations that they're rigged, they're dodgy, they're this, they're that, that the Australian Electoral Commission is going, oh, we could do with some of those. Let's have a few of those for the next election. Your response to that?
It was hard to know what to say to that. I'll have to speak to a friend in Venezuela or perhaps Chile who might have more intel on how these things work than I do. But look, I'd be very surprised. Look, this is one of the things, all jokes aside, we actually do reflect on what we've got in terms of our own democracy here, and we're very, very lucky. We have it well run, and it goes to show the dangers of having these machines counting. Here we do it all by hand, and so we should. And we've got to protect our democracy. I think this will uncover some pretty unfortunate home truths for the American democracy, the greatest democracy in the world, and it's going to be a bit sad, but let's see what happens.
Well, very quickly, Richo, Joe Biden is saying the first 100 days of a Biden administration, everybody's got to wear a mask. You support that?
Well, in a word, no.
Good. So he's got off to a flying start, Biden. He's got masks, which Richo's against. He's got Iran, which Richo's against. And Richo reckons Trump should fight on. I love it. Thank you both so much. Richo and Alex, great to see you both. We'll catch up soon.